Here's everything you need to know for GCSE Biology Paper 1 today, part 6. This is the final part. My name is Chris, and honestly, if you guys like these videos and you want me to do them for the rest of your papers, make sure you repost this, send this to a friend, and drop a comment. One of the things you need to know about is how monoclonal antibodies are produced. So let's have a look at that. Firstly, a mouse is injected with a specific antigen. This stimulates an immune response in the mouse, producing lymphocytes. Lymphocytes with antibodies specific to that antigen. So we then extract those lymphocytes from the mouse's spleen, which is where they're produced, and we combine them with a tumor cell, fuse them together, and this makes a hybridoma. This hybridoma is then cloned many times, which produces monoclonal antibodies because these lymphocytes produce loads of antibodies. They're all the same, specific to that antigen that we injected the mouse with. Now, the reason that we fuse together this lymphocyte, which produces those antibodies specific to that antigen, with a tumor cell is because this lymphocyte produces these antibodies, but there's only one of these lymphocytes and it's not doing it very quickly. And a tumor cell grows rapidly. So by fusing these together, we get the best of both worlds. We get a hybridoma, which is a cell which produces lymphocytes, which produce antibodies super quickly. One of the biggest advantages of monoclonal antibodies is the fact that they are so specific, meaning we can target specific cells, specific pathogens, specific diseases, without affecting other healthy cells. But disadvantages may include the fact that we're using mice, which some people aren't happy about. There's complications during it, and it's not a very easy process, which means that it's very expensive. And here are some of the main uses of monoclonal antibodies, pregnancy tests being one of them, where the monoclonal antibodies bind to the HCG, which is the pregnancy hormone. We've got diagnosis of disease, we've got research, and we've got treatment of disease, where the monoclonal antibodies attack the specific disease cells, the pathogens. Let's fly through the mineral deficiencies in plants as well. Nitrates are super important for the production of amino acids and therefore for proteins, protein synthesis. If we have a lack of nitrates in plants, then the plants will experience stunted growth. Some leaves will turn pale green, yellow, and some will die. If we don't have enough magnesium, magnesium is important for chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is needed for photosynthesis. Then the leaves turn yellow, chlorosis, and plants experience stunted growth. Potassium is important for the production of flowers and fruits. So if there's not enough potassium in plants, we have poor growth of flowers and fruit, yellowing of leaves, and some dead spots. Plants can have some physical and chemical defenses. Some physical ones include a cellulose cell wall, which is a tough outer layer for support and protection, making it difficult for pathogens to enter. Plants have a waxy cuticle. This is a waterproof barrier, stops microorganisms from entering, but they can still enter through the stomata. Some plants, like trees, have bark, which is a thick, tough outer layer. Again, stops things coming in, just like humans have skin. And leaves falling in the winter. Deciduous trees drop infected leaves in autumn and winter to remove any pathogens that are trying to attack the plant. Plants can also have chemical defenses. Some plants can create antimicrobial chemicals, antibacterial chemicals, and antibiotic compounds, which is why a lot of our medication comes from plants. And here are some plant adaptations that we should remember. Some plants can make poisons, so animals that try to eat the plant will get ill. Some plants have thorns, sharp structures, which make it painful for animals to try and eat the plant, hairy stems and leaves to deter insects, drooping or curling when touched, again to frighten insects, and mimicry, which is where a plant looks like it's diseased or dangerous, so animals try to avoid it. Very smart. For photosynthesis, we need to remember the word and the symbol equation. The word equation's carbon dioxide plus water makes glucose and oxygen in the presence of light, which is brought in by chlorophyll. And the symbol equation is 6CO2 plus 6H2O makes C6H12O6 and 6O2. That's the balanced equation over here. Now, this glucose that's produced during photosynthesis is super important for plants because one, it's required for respiration to take place, but also, both aerobic and anaerobic by the way, but also it combines with nitrates to form amino acids for protein synthesis, and it makes cellulose, which is the cell wall that we spoke about. It strengthens the cell wall and it's able to protect the plant. Some of this glucose can be converted into insoluble starch to store in leaves or roots for later, and it can also be turned into fats and oils, which again can be stored later, perhaps in the seeds of the plants. And here are the factors affecting photosynthesis. Starting with temperature, we can see that as temperature increases up to the optimum temperature, Rate of photosynthesis also increases because there's an increased number of collisions because of the higher kinetic energy of the molecules as the temperature increases, but past the optimum temperature, photosynthesis rate decreases because enzymes begin to denature, as we spoke about in an earlier part. With light intensity, we can see that as light intensity increases, so does the rate of photosynthesis, but then it drops off. Why? Because at this point over here, another factor becomes limiting, such as the carbon dioxide concentration. And exactly the same with carbon dioxide concentration, as CO2 increases, so does the rate of photosynthesis, and then it drops off. Again, because the more CO2 there is, the more photosynthesis can occur because it's one of the reactants of photosynthesis. But as it reaches this plateau over here, this is because there's another factor limiting. And when we talk about another factor being limiting, it means another piece of the puzzle which is required for photosynthesis to take place is lacking. There's not enough of it. One factor that's not here is chlorophyll, but we should also remember that chlorophyll absorbs sunlight. So the more chlorophyll we have, the more sunlight can be absorbed, and therefore the greater the rate of photosynthesis. Things that might affect chlorophyll is magnesium, which we spoke about earlier, which is used to produce chlorophyll. We also need to know about cellular respiration, which is an exothermic reaction. It releases more energy than it takes in, and therefore it's super important for things like muscles contracting, for keeping warm, and for chemical reactions as well. And aerobic respiration is glucose plus oxygen makes CO2, carbon dioxide, and water. This is the chemical equation over here, C6H12O6, which is glucose plus oxygen makes 6 CO2 and 6 H2O. 6, 6, and 6. This is aerobic respiration, which means it's in the presence of oxygen, an abundance of oxygen. So therefore, this is the equation for it. Anaerobic respiration is in the absence of oxygen. So we've got glucose turning into lactic acid. In yeast cells, we've got glucose turning into alcohol and carbon dioxide. Again, in the absence of oxygen, there's no oxygen on the reactant side. Some energy is still released during this reaction, so it's still an exothermic reaction, but a lot less energy is released than in aerobic respiration. Now we need to be able to talk about how the body deals with lactic acid, and this is one of two ways. One, this lactic acid can be oxidized again, which means it turns into CO2 and water, or this lactic acid can be transported into the liver, and the liver is able to turn it back into glucose again. And remember the term oxygen debt, that's where we owe our body oxygen because we've had too much anaerobic respiration take place, and therefore we need to get rid of some of this lactic acid. And that's the end of part 6. Well done if you guys got through all of these parts. Make sure you drop a comment and let me know how your exam goes. Please do drop a follow, please repost this video, and I'll see you guys for the next exam.